Imagine two people, same city, same job title, same paycheck, hitting their bank account on the exact same Friday every 2 weeks. They both have degrees, they're still paying off. They both work late sometimes. They both feel that quiet background anxiety when a big expense shows up out of nowhere. And 20 years later, same starting point, same income, same 24 hours in the day, one of them is sitting on close to $1 million. And the other one is still two unexpected expenses away from a financial crisis. Same person, same money, completely different outcome. That's what we're unpacking today. Because we've been handed this deeply flawed idea almost from childhood that wealth is mostly about how hard you work. That if you're not rich yet, you just need to grind more, hustle harder, stay later. But the actual math tells a completely different story. And once you see it, you genuinely cannot unsee it. My name is Nico, and today we're figuring out why some people get rich without working harder, what they actually understand about money that most people don't, how it creates a gap that quietly grows into something enormous, and what you can realistically do about it starting right now. And before we go any further, I want to be upfront about something. This isn't a video about working less, or about some passive income shortcut, or about quitting your job and doing dropshipping. It's about understanding a game that has real rules that are operating on your finances whether you know them or not. And when you don't know the rules, the game plays you. Every single month. Here's the foundation that almost nobody fully internalizes, and I mean really internalizes at a gut level, not just intellectually. There are two fundamentally different ways to generate income in your life. The first is trading your time for money. You show up, you put in the hours, you get a paycheck. This is how almost all of us start, and honestly, there's nothing wrong with it. But there is a ceiling built into this model, a physical ceiling. You cannot trade more than 24 hours in a day. No matter how talented you are, no matter how many productivity hacks you run, your income in this model is ultimately capped by the number of hours you have available. When you stop working, the income stops. The second way is completely different. It's when your money starts working without you. When the capital you've already earned, the money you've saved, gets deployed into assets that generate returns on their own. Stock index funds, dividends, real estate, bonds. The assets don't get tired. They don't take sick days. They don't burn out on a Wednesday afternoon because of a difficult meeting. And here's the thing that makes this so extraordinary. The returns compound. Your gains earn gains. And those gains earn gains. Over long enough periods of time, that process produces numbers that look almost impossible. Let me introduce you to two people. Their names are Marcus and Daniel, both 29 years old, both living in a mid-sized American city. Both earning $68,000 a year, which is a legitimate, real income, above median, enough to live on comfortably. Neither of them is rich, but neither of them is struggling. Their friends would say they're both doing pretty well. On paper, they are virtually identical. The difference, the only real difference, is what happens every single month after payday. Marcus set up an automatic investment transfer about 2 years ago, $550 a month, going straight into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. He barely thinks about it anymore. It just happens before he can see it. He's still driving a used 2018 Honda he bought with cash. His apartment is clean, comfortable, and not something you'd post on Instagram. He goes out with friends. He takes a trip sometimes. He's not living a restricted, joyless life. He just made one quiet, non-negotiable decision early on. His future gets funded first. Daniel is a good person, genuinely hardworking, and his life from the outside looks noticeably better than Marcus's. He leased a newer car last year, something sleek with leather seats. His apartment is in a nicer building, rooftop deck, gym in the basement, the kind of place that photographs well. He eats out more. He got a raise last spring and did what almost everyone does when they get a raise. He finally let himself breathe. He upgraded a few things. He felt like he'd earned it, because he had earned it. That's the thing. Every single decision Daniel made was individually reasonable, individually defensible. Nothing looked like a red flag. Nothing felt like a mistake. And that is exactly what makes this so difficult to talk about, because the drift is almost invisible until the math catches up with you. Let me show you the math, because this is where things get real.
Marcus has been putting in $550 a month since age 27. Let's use a conservative 8% average annual return, which is actually below the S&P 500's historical long-term average, closer to 10%. But we'll be conservative. By the time Marcus is 57, 30 years of contributions later, his portfolio has grown to roughly $820,000. Not because he worked harder, not because he got promoted more. Because he started a machine, left it alone, and let time do what time does. But here's the part that will blow your mind, and this is the visual that most people never get to see. Around year 14, something almost surreal happens. The annual return on Marcus's existing balance starts outpacing his monthly contributions. The portfolio is growing faster from returns alone than from the money he's adding. The machine is running. And in those last 10 years especially, the compounding curve goes nearly vertical. More than half of Marcus's total wealth gets built in the final decade without any change in behavior, without any extra effort, without anything except time doing its job. Daniel has some retirement savings. He contributes just enough to his 401k to grab the employer match, because he's smart enough to know that's free money. He has money in a savings account. He is not in crisis. But that second machine, the one that runs parallel to your job, in the background, earning while you sleep, barely exists for Daniel. Because the capital that would have powered it kept getting redirected into the lease payment, into the nicer apartment, into the lifestyle that felt earned and reasonable and absolutely, completely normal. The math is brutal. After 30 years, the wealth gap between Marcus and Daniel isn't the difference in what they contributed each month, multiplied by 12, multiplied by 30. It's that number compounded. We're talking a gap that lands somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000 from the same income, working the same hours, making what both of them thought were smart, normal, adult decisions. And that's the crazy part. There was no dramatic failure in Daniel's story, no reckless bet, no obvious turning point where you could point and say, that's where it went wrong. Just a slow, quiet, invisible drift towards spending identity over wealth building and the math, silently, mercilessly doing its work in the background. Now, let's talk about why this actually happens, because I want to be clear, Daniel's outcome is not a moral failure. It is the predictable result of the environment he was operating in. There's a psychological phenomenon called hedonic adaptation. And what it means, practically, is this. Whatever upgrade you make, the nicer apartment, the newer car, the better phone, delivers a real, genuine burst of satisfaction and happiness for about 2 to 3 months. And then it becomes your new normal. And normal doesn't feel exciting. So you start noticing the next level up. The pleasure from the upgrade fades, but the cost is permanent. Automatic. Monthly. Your lifestyle ratchets up, but it almost never ratchets back down. That's the invisible trap running inside your nervous system. And here's where it gets really interesting, because there's a social layer on top of that, which makes it almost impossible to resist without self-awareness. We live in environments where everyone around us is upgrading in rough synchrony. Your friend group starts going to nicer restaurants. Your coworker pulls into the parking lot in something that makes your car feel dated. Social media delivers an endless highlight reel of people living at a level just slightly above yours. Not so far above that it feels irrelevant, but close enough to feel like a benchmark. This isn't an accident. There are billion-dollar marketing ecosystems specifically engineered to make your current situation feel like a gap to be filled. You deserve this. You earned this. Treat yourself. You only live once. But nobody runs ads that say, your neighbor just quietly crossed $400,000 in net worth, because that doesn't sell anything. There's also a deep identity component here that I think gets underestimated. What you drive, where you live, what you wear to the office, these aren't just purchases. They're social signals. To your peers, to your coworkers, to your family, and to yourself. There's an identity wrapped inside of consumption that makes scaling back feel like retreat, like you're moving backward. When in reality, the person building quietly in the background is playing a completely different game and winning it just without any of the visible signals that our culture uses to keep score. Now, I can already hear the objection that's forming for some of you. Nico, this is all well and good, but I have real constraints. My rent is not optional. My student loans are real. Childcare is real. I cannot just redirect $550 a month into index funds. And I hear that. Genuinely. The number is not the point. The number matters far less than the habit and the timeline. If $550 feels impossible, let's talk about $150, because let me show you the math on that. $150 a month at 8% annual return over 30 years comes out to just over $220,000. That's not generational wealth, but it's a car paid in cash with no monthly payment ever. It's a 6-month emergency fund. It's the difference between a financial emergency being a crisis and being an inconvenience. It's options, which is actually what wealth is. Options and freedom from urgency. The opportunity cost number I want you to leave this video with is this one. The average new car payment in America right now is approximately $730 a month. If that $730 went into a low-cost index fund instead, at 8%, for 35 years, you'd end up with right around $1.7 million. One car payment, one habit. Repeated over a working lifetime. Compounded. I am not telling you never to buy a car that's not realistic. I'm telling you to know what you're actually paying, not the sticker price, not the monthly payment. The real cost in future wealth is the number that never shows up on the contract. Because here's the thing, and this is the mindset shift that actually changes outcomes. The people who get rich without working harder have internalized a different question. Not, can I afford this? But, what does this cost me in future wealth? Every dollar you spend has two values, what it buys today and what it could have become if deployed differently over time. That doesn't mean live like a monk. It means know the trade you're making, consciously, with your eyes open. The behavioral flip that produces the most consistent wealth-building results, not in theory, in actual data and in real people's lives, is paying yourself first. Automated, non-negotiable. Before the spending decisions compete for that money, not I'll invest whatever's left over at the end of the month, because there is almost never anything left over. First the investment, then the life. The sequencing is everything. That habit, started early enough and maintained long enough, is the second machine. That's the thing running in the background for Marcus while he goes to work every day. And the wild thing is, you don't need a higher salary to build it. You don't need a side hustle. You don't need to catch a lucky break. You need a machine that compounds, and you need to leave it alone long enough for compounding to become overwhelming. The two people at the beginning of this story didn't diverge because of talent or luck or effort. They diverged because one of them built a second machine early enough and left it alone long enough for it to matter. That's the whole secret. It's not glamorous. It doesn't make a great Instagram post. But 30 years later, the math writes a story that's very, very hard to argue with. If something in this video shifted the way you're thinking, hit that like button and subscribe, because we break down exactly this kind of thing every week. And I genuinely want to know, in the comments, what's the one financial move you keep saying you'll start, but keep pushing off? Be honest. I read all of them. As always, everything in this video is purely for educational purposes. I'm not a licensed financial advisor, and nothing here constitutes personalized financial advice. Run your own numbers, do your own research, and for major financial decisions, please talk to a qualified professional. I'll see you in the next one.